there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Devil May Cry 4 Dante Must Die difficulty, triple S rank walkthrough. This is mission 14, Forest of Ruin. I come back into this room and smash these orb places here, because for some reason, whenever I don't do this, I don't find all the orbs needed for an S rank. Whenever I do this, I get an S rank. I was under the belief that you only had to get orbs in the rooms you have to travel through, so with that logic, you wouldn't need to go back, but for some reason, that is my placebo that helps me get the orbs, and so you're going to see me do that. Ooh, we're introduced to the faults as well. Now, you remember earlier on when we were in Mission 6, and I said I really didn't like those stupid fish spiky monsters that Agnes throws at you? I don't like them because they only show up a few times, and they're a frustrating enemy that runs away from you and attacks you from a place of immunity, which is in the geometry. That's the reason I don't like them. Do they have merit? Yes. They're still interesting, they still have, you know, qualities. And then there's the faults, which whoever thought of this enemy and whoever decided to put them here needs a slap. Because if you don't know, if it grabs you when it does that, in some bizarre homage to Nightmare, it takes you to this strange place where things don't happen very often. And you have to fight a bunch of enemies, and the enemies are generally Chimeran, which is really bad news. So it puts you into a fight against a bunch of shitty enemies, and then you come out of it, and you're back where you started. And when you move into rooms, there's usually like 3 or 4 of those bastards knocking about, and they can cover a wide area. And to kill them, you only have to wait for them to do an attack and then punish them. But they always turn up at the worst possible moment. So you'll be charging a distorted real impact, and they'll grab you. Or you'll be doing a combo stunning an enemy that's significantly more dangerous than they are, and then they'll come and grab you. And luckily enough, I didn't get grabbed in the recording of this, but I got annoyed by them, because why do they exist? There are so many other ways they could put pressure on the player and mix up the environment and the fighting. They don't have to put an enemy that has no place in the game. Like, no redeemable qualities whatsoever. It's just, why? Sometimes just why? But in the previous video I was talking about a lack of communication between the development studio Platinum Games. So it might be an interesting debate to talk about here, because you normally hear me saying a lot of the things I like about Platinum. So here's one of the things I don't get. Well, I do get it, but I don't get it, if that makes any sense. So, toggleable lock-on. Fantastic invention. It's something that appears in Anarchy Reigns, the most lauded and weakest Platinum game review-wise to date, even though I think it's a great game. It's just, you know, a very particular game. Toggleable lock-on. Metal Gear Rising. Toggleable lock-on. What do those two games have in common? Both of them are not Kamiya games. They are produced inside of Platinum, but not overlooked and directed by Kamiya. He might have been a producer at some point, but he was not the director. I don't know if the teams were drastically different. I don't really know how big Platinum is. I get the impression they're not that big. That's why they do projects they believe in, rather than, you know, sucking corporate cock and releasing Call of Duty 90. However, the Kamiya ones don't have toggleable lock. Bayonetta, no toggleable lock. Wonderful 101, no toggleable lock. In fact, the Wonderful 101 has my least favourite lock-on mechanic in any Platinum game I've ever played, because it's stupid. And it could have been so much simpler. So I don't understand why they would have this super progressive, interesting, and entirely optional mechanic taken out of certain games and not in other games. The only thing I can think of is maybe Kamiya doesn't like them. You know, maybe the other people do. I'm not too sure. But this leads us on to another thing that's, you know, in contradiction with this dev house. Those games I just mentioned, with the lock-ons, have a restart feature. Admittedly, only Metal Gear Rising has a good one. For some reason, Platinum Games, I don't know if it's because they like rank, I don't know if it's because they prefer whole restarts instead of checkpoint restarts, but they just do not have the ability to quickly restart. It's always some archaic fucking arbitrary nonsense that you have to do something that should be streamlined, because it's 2014 and, you know, gamers have the worst attention spans on the planet at this point because they're so bombarded by stimulus from every other walk of life. Why the hell do I have to sit through 2 loading screens and 2 menus to get back to the area where I could have just paused it and pressed restart? And the thing that frustrates me the most is Metal Gear Rising does this perfectly. You pause it, you press down, you press A, and you're done. It's literally as easy as that. It might be 1 or 2 more presses, but at the end of the day, it's quick, it works, and the load screen isn't terrible. I think it's almost instant, and it's exactly how these games should be. But all the other games don't have this. Bayonetta takes forever to get back in the game when you want to restart. Bayonetta 2, I'm absolutely terrified, will have this same dogshit, functionality. Wonderful 101 is even worse. You have to press start, you have to go like right on the bumper of the Wii U controller like 2 or 3 times, then you have to go down the menu to restart or retry checkpoint, then you have to press yes, and then you have to sit through a loading screen, which takes too long, to come back into the game when it should have been 2 presses. It just doesn't make sense. And I'd love to know why. Because I think sometimes when you get an answer, it takes the sting away. Like, I just did a pure platinum run of Bayonetta. And to do that, you have to quit out of the game every time you get hit. And I got hit a lot, because you get hit a lot on that game. And the amount of times that I went back to the main menu just to select load game and like pick hard drive and shit, stuff that you shouldn't have to do in this day and age. Like this game, I can't really fault this game because it's 2008, games are still on a transitional period of checkpoints becoming much more progressive and natural. So when you die on this game, it throws you back a million hours ago and you're just like, what the fuck is this about? Dying on this game is tantamount to restarting. Like, it's generally better to restart. And it makes sense, because this is a game which is rank first. I honestly believe they think people are going to play this like a speedrunner would or like a rank player would. If you die, you've ruined your score, and score's a big thing in Devil May Cry's, so they think you're just going to restart. There's a lot of people who play these games who don't care about score. Never have, never will. It's not a thing for them. So those people just look at it as terrible checkpoints, which it is. And I'd be really curious, because Devil May Cry 5, there's been no announcement for it. A lot of people are curious of what the state of that game is. A lot of people are worried it's going to be a DMC2 sequel of the Ninja Theory hybrid type, which I don't think is true, because if you remember, Ninja Theory have stated they're working on a new IP, and by its very definition, new IP does not mean sequel, which tells you that they're putting all their creative effort into something different, so it can't be them, for better or worse, depending on how you feel. Oh, by the way here, this is just the pits, man. There's only one hybrid assault, and he's the one you want to kill, because he's the one who's going to pressure you. The cool thing about this enemy, and the only cool thing about it, is if you shoot it enough, it falls over, and when it falls over, it gives you an opportunity to maybe attack it. However, if it hasn't done its ambient golden spam you with its Rotsuki Doji bullshit, it'll do that when it's on the ground, like it did just then. And just to rub salt in this ever so infecting wound, they've got the faults popping up as well, making it so that you can't even sit still. Like, at this moment in time, I just want to know who did this. Like, who was behind the scenes going, this will make them rage, they will all worship me and think that my game design is king. Like, I'd rather fight 2 blitzers, I really would. Because at least that wouldn't be full of this. Just bullshit. Like, I'd rather fight Burial again. Like, give me Burial, man. Burial is fine. Like, this could have been a room filmed with, I don't know, enemies that have never been put together. It could have been Frosts and Hybrids. It could have been anything but this. And it does make sense, because we're in the forest, and that little crazy peacock monster thing that turns, that like walking chicken drumstick that turns these into chimeras is in this forest. And these are covered in plants, so they're kind of fauna-esque or flora. So, you know, you can say it works thematically. It's just not fun. It's not fun. It's not fun. You don't see anybody making combo videos with these enemies. Do you know why? Because when you're juggling them in the air, they punch you in the mouth. It's just dumb. I do like how the scarecrows die. I think that's cool. Scarecrows are one of my favourite enemies in this game. I hate that they can block, but, you know, Devil May Cry has always had blocking, so if you were to point it out as a flaw now, you'd be going against the entire series. Oh, that's something worth discussing as well. I was on a stream recently, and I was getting really frustrated. One of the things that bugs me the most whenever you're in a gameplay stream on Twitch is that there are always people who know nothing about what they're talking about, who are the most eager to give advice. They're the biggest backseat gamers of them all, because unfortunately they're deluded into thinking they know a single fucking thing, and they don't. And obviously I'm not talking about everybody. There's a lot of people in streams who know a hell of a lot about games, you know. When I used to stream, there was a ton of people in there that knew exactly what they were talking about. I'm on about those people who do nothing but talk bullshit. They irritate me to death. And difficulty for the most is subjective, guys, but there are certain things that are just fact that can't be refuted, regardless of, you know, its relativity. It just doesn't work that way. And one of them is, this is easier than Devil May Cry 3. Devil May Cry 4 is universally easier than 3. That is fact. You ask anybody who plays the game at a higher level on the harder difficulties, who's ever gone for rank, who's ever tried to do anything remotely challenging with this game, will tell you that it is easier, just on a fundamental level. The requirements for the ranks are easier. The damage you take is smaller. The enemies are less tough, you know. It's so much simpler by so many ways. Irrefutably simpler. Does that mean that it's not hard? No. This game is tough as balls. You have to learn it. If you don't learn it, it'll destroy you. It'll destroy people who think they've learnt it. The people who are saying they think that it's harder than Devil May Cry 3 are the people who have been destroyed by it. But I'm telling you now, anybody who's beaten all the games on Dante Must Die has to have the opinion that Devil May Cry 3 is the hardest. Because I just can't see how you could see it any other way. The health increase those enemies get is insane. It's like nothing else. The damage you take, the encounters you face, it is just so much more punishing. And the only people who have played it at such a level and got those ranks, who could then go on to say that they think 3 is easier, are the people who are too good at it. It's that simple. There's no middle ground here. Devil May Cry 1, the stages are easy, the bosses are hard. Bosses on Devil May Cry 1 are brutal. However, it's a slightly more simplistic game in its combat. There's not as many combos. To beat the bosses, you pretty much have to know their patterns, jump when they're vulnerable, and then counter them. Devil May Cry 3, like, if I tried to do what I'm doing with this game on that game, it would take me years to do it. This took me like a week when you put all the time I played together. There were best ranks on this game done on my first attempt. I couldn't even do the first level on Devil May Cry 3 on one attempt, because that game is insane, is absolutely insane. And this is coming from somebody who has got double S ranks on a dozen Dante Must Die difficulty levels, including Virgil 3.